Okay, I think we are officially recording. So just want to say hello. My name is Rachel Williams. I use she, her pronouns. I am the program director, program manager for the Phoenix Center here on campus, Anschutz campus. And today we're going to be doing a little bit of information about the March 30th event for the first year School of Medicine students. So I just wanted to check in with you guys beforehand and make sure that I provide this information a little bit earlier so folks can process, digest, and then we will have space on the day of for you guys to ask questions and to have a larger group discussion about some of this information and material. And I will just dive right in. Okay, so self-care, something we all hear about all the time, right? But super important, especially when we're discussing information that can be really triggering and really traumatic. It's obviously something that exists within the interpersonal violence field as well as the medical fields. So just please remember to check in with yourself, with the cohorts of students that you will be working with, checking in throughout the day. Breaks are super important. We will have scheduled breaks throughout this process, but also just being mindful of like when your students and when yourself, when you might need a break. So reminding folks throughout the process, breaks are available. If you feel uneasy or upset, please take care of yourself, take a break, go get some water, use the restroom when you need to. Also, just a reminder that Phoenix Center will have staff on scene for folks who want that space to discuss. So we do offer confidential advocacy services for folks who aren't familiar with the work we do. That can look like a lot of different things, but just know that we will be available in a separate room for people who want to share and may need someone to speak with. Secondarily, there will be a quiet room, so a place for folks who just need some time to themselves and need some space to process alone. So just let us know if you have questions. We are here. That's why we are here today. So we will be there on the 30th and able to support those who are in need. We'll also be available afterwards, of course. So if you have questions that may arise afterwards, whether it be through you or for your students, we are going to be available. Just remember, like, vicarious trauma is a real thing. It's something that we will all experience in this industry. So just be mindful of that. Remind folks that it's okay. That's a normal process, normal part of experiencing or witnessing trauma. So just really be mindful of everyone's mental health, including your own. Also, never underestimate the power of comedic relief. So sometimes it's really important for folks to break up the seriousness and the intensity of some of the material with like monotony of everyday things. Also with jokes when appropriate, right? So being very mindful to use really appropriate jokes and in situations where it's appropriate. Here's one. I love a good corny joke. What is the difference between the bird flu and the swine flu? This is not medical, by the way. This is a corny dad joke. One requires treatment and the other an ointment. Yes. So just use like funny humor like that when it's appropriate and you feel like your students need something to laugh at, whether it be like you, right? Like you can laugh at me. That's a really corny joke. So our objectives today, we're going to be screening for signs of distress. Also going to be discussing what language to use, what to say if information is shared, and talking about validating our students, and how to navigate difficult conversations. And then I'll also share some information, where to refer folks if things are disclosed, and just what exists within our community and where we can refer people. So signs of distress. You obviously are familiar with your cohort, with your people a lot better than I am, but just being very mindful of like what's going on. Look at their body language. Are they posturing themselves in a way that's not usual for them? Are they not making contact? And usually they do make a lot of eye contact. Is there shifting in their body? Does it feel like they're acting uncomfortably? If so, check in with them, ask folks how they're doing. Encourage to take breaks and take a pause in the conversation if you notice that a lot of the cohort is giving you body language that appears that they need a break. So just being mindful of that. And then what to do when we are noticing that. So assessing for safety, initially check in, take someone aside in a space that seems a lot quieter, maybe more confidential, so they aren't sharing in or feeling like they have to expose themselves in front of the entire cohort. Just taking them aside, asking them how they're doing, checking in. How are you feeling? I noticed X, Y, and Z, and that's not normally how you react. So I just wanted to check in with you. Ask them if they're currently physically safe. Hopefully the answer to that is yes, since we are going to be within the school at that time. If the answer is no, obviously knowing, like, calling emergency services if that's appropriate and necessary. And then secondarily, are you mentally safe? So checking in about the mental health. If not, then knowing who to call. We have some information here. Obviously 911, we all know 911. Hopefully it doesn't rise to that situation or scenario, but Phoenix Center through Auraria has a crisis line that folks within the Anschutz community are able to utilize. So I just encourage folks to reach out to them. There's also a chat line and I believe that you can text as well. So Auraria does offer those services for our folks here. So please utilize that if that's appropriate. Obviously walking them down to where we as Phoenix Center will be situated. That's obviously appropriate as well. Colorado Crisis Line. This is a mental health crisis number. For those who aren't familiar, it's a 24-hour crisis line. It's filled with counselors. So a good place to refer folks. And then CU Anschutz Care Team. So they do ask that you call 911 first if there's a physical emergency, a mental health emergency, then secondarily make a referral to them, and then they reach out to best support our students. So they are with our Student Office of Outreach and Support. Okay, so a little bit about language. Historically, the word victim is used, and even in criminal justice world, folks use victim, offender, victim, perpetrator, defendant. So that language can be pretty harsh, right? So labeling someone is not always the best thing to do in terms of interpersonal violence situations. So just be mindful that is not everyone's preferred terms. I have met people who like those terms, who prefer to use those, but that's not the case for everyone. So in other instances, people will use survivor, if survived this type of violence. That's appropriate for them. But again, like, being mindful, that's not universal. So the best practice that we have is using person first language. So for instance, I say someone who has experienced, or as someone who has experienced domestic violence, or it sounds like you've experienced sexual assault. Can you tell me more about that? So really pay attention to what language other people are using when working with someone who's experienced this type of violence. So we really want to mirror their language, but if not, best practices are to use those who have experienced this type of violence. So how do we support someone who discloses something? We want to mirror their language. So do they say my ex? Do they say perpetrator? Do they say Bobby? A lot of the times folks are still in relationships with people, so that creates some complicated dynamic. So again, just being mindful of, like, what language are they using? We do this because we want to create a safe, supportive, and non-judgmental space. So how do we do that? We validate their experiences. We'll talk a little bit about, and I think you did receive or will be receiving some information about the ORS process. So just being mindful of, like, accepting and open-ended questions when you are speaking to someone, affirming the information that you do receive, and validating those experiences. So for example, reaffirm with someone that they don't deserve this type of violence. Thank them for feeling comfortable and safe enough to share this information with you. I'm sorry that happened. No one deserves this type of violence. No one deserves to be treated like that. So there's a lot of ways you can say that, but really validating and thanking them for feeling comfortable to share with you. Obviously, as staff and faculty who are non-confidential, there are requirements through Office of Equity, so be mindful of that when appropriate, and share that with your students if they do share some information with you. I think the best plan of action for this particular event is to just refer them on to Phoenix Center. But the reason that I wanted to discuss this is because if you are going to be that person's first support and the first person they share it with, we want to make sure that they're having the best experience possible. This might be the first time they've ever shared this type of information. They might be scared to do so, and you're someone that they're familiar with. So we want to make sure that they feel supported when they do share that, and that then if that's like the limit of your ability to offer support, let's refer them on. But really important that they do feel supported in that first instance. So what do you do if the person, if you're the person receiving the information and the other person hasn't really shared much about the language that they use? I would just say, so tell me about the person who harmed you, right? So if they're not giving you specific language, go back to that person first language. So how can you help? Obviously listening to what folks are sharing. What do they want? What kind of support do they want? So someone might be sharing something with you because they feel comfortable, because you're a known ally to them or your support network for them. But sometimes we have ideas of what might be like the safest option or the best choice that we see for that person. That's not necessarily always what they want. So just being mindful that maybe someone just wants to share their story. They've never shared their story before or their experience before. So maybe they just want to process through it with someone or vent. Maybe they're looking for validation. If someone has experienced a certain type of violence for an extended period of time, they might not know that it's not normal or that it's harmful. And so sharing with someone to get a reaction might then be validating. So knowing like that it's appropriate to say things like that doesn't feel right, or that seems very harmful to me. Again, PCA advocates, we will be there for support. So just know that we are there to support folks who have are looking to share that with someone. So again, knowing what resources are available is super important. I think also important is knowing that someone might not feel very comfortable sharing, right? So be mindful that there might be some cultural considerations there. If someone is part of the LGBTQIA community, maybe fears of being outed or sharing too much about their personal life isn't something they're ready to do. So lack of knowledge of resources, lack of understanding of the dynamics, all of these can play into what a person feels comfortable sharing. So let's chat about how do we navigate these difficult conversations. Within your small groups, you're obviously going to be sharing a lot about the case studies and maybe like your own approaches to patients who have disclosed or are experiencing this type of violence. So we want to validate, right? Like we want to make sure that everyone within the group is feeling supported and feeling like they can share. So how do we create those supportive environments? Validate someone when they're talking, right? We don't want to minimize. As a facilitator, I'm totally comfortable that you all are able to do that, but I think sometimes that can be more difficult when you're dealing with 10 students, right? So allowing a person the space to discussion, but not minimization. So when we are talking about ors and open-ended questions, reaffirming and reflecting back to someone is super important. Also making sure that you are, so making sure that you're creating that space for someone. If it takes a turn and you have maybe one student shutting down or minimizing another student, knowing when it's comfortable and when it's appropriate to check in and address the situation. So we have here some D's of bystander training. So there's several D's within the bystander training, but I felt like these fit the situation really well. So we have direct intervention. So stepping in as a facilitator and addressing the situation directly. This technique tends to work better when the person that you're trying to stop is someone that knows and trusts you, right? So like you're the teacher, you have this guidance kind of role. So just step in when you feel like that's necessary. And then I would say have a direct conversation if you feel like you've assessed the situation and that's the most appropriate plan of action. So asking someone, did you think that when you said X, Y, and Z, it might sound invalidating to the other person's experience. Or you can also do this in a lens of like, how do you think a patient would react if you said that? Or what's the best way to approach a patient in this scenario? So maybe bringing it back down to that patient if you're feeling that there's some tension between the students. So our other two Ds, distract and delegate, I think that these go really well together. Distracting, so distract either person in the situation in order to intervene. If the discussion escalates, separate the parties and then have them focus on the assignment in smaller groups. So if you're feeling like there's a lot of tension here, or maybe you know that these particular students get into a lot of discussions, creating a space for everyone to have those conversations in a supportive way is important. So if you need to split up the group and say, you guys take case study 1, the rest of you talk about case study 2, and then we'll reconvene. Even coming to get a Phoenix Center advocate and say, hey, would you mind just working with this group over here while I'm working with them, and then we can all reconvene. So making sure to like intervene at that particular point. And then afterwards, assessing. So ask the people who were involved in that dispute or discussion that might have been minimizing. How are you feeling? Just wanted to check in with you afterwards. Is there harm that took place during that discussion? If there was a harm that took place, is this something that needs to be repaired or restored? And what does that look like? And how can we navigate that? Again, Phoenix Center is here if you need extra support and need to flag someone down, just know myself and my coworker Jessica will also be there. So again, going back to afterwards. So once we've concluded all these case study with really, really heavy material, check in with your students, ask folks how they're doing, get acknowledgements, right? Like set the tone. And as facilitators, I think it's really important because we can set the tone of how things go. We can create more breaks if that's something that's needed. If folks are just like, I want to get through it, maybe like creating a space for them to just streamline that. Reminding them throughout the process that resources are available, that Phoenix Center is here. And then also this exists for the entirety of their tenure here and for your tenure here as well. So just knowing that we are available as Phoenix Center representatives to answer questions, to refer folks to the right place. Sometimes folks call us and just have a question and it's a 20-minute conversation, and that's fine too. We also do support services for people who have experienced this type of violence. So if someone's looking for like more of a long-term plan or process, we're able to support them and guide them through that process as well. But we are able to answer like questions that might be shorter or simpler than you might be wanting to ask. So just know we're always available. Here are some additional resources. This is the QR code that'll take you directly to our website with a list of resources that are categorized. But here are some of the well-known ones, better known ones, some that are places I refer folks to a lot. So for folks who've experienced domestic violence, there's the Rose Andom Center. This is a resource. It's a family justice center downtown that serves anyone, I think, believe within the state of Colorado. So it's not jurisdictional. There's no definitions as far as like folks that they do serve. This is a family justice center. So it's set up with police department folks, law enforcement officials through the judicial system, and then a ton of nonprofits. So folks go in and they do like a intake process with the people there, and then kind of check boxes as far as like what they're looking for. Are you looking for counseling? Are you looking for civil legal help? Do they identify as Latinx and they're looking for a resource specifically for that? They can refer folks to the people that are actually housed there. So it's pretty cool. And then we have, for folks who've experienced sexual assault, we have the Blue Bench. They offer support services within hospitals. So if someone is undergoing a SANE exam, sexual assault nurse examination, or forensic nurse examination, they're able to be there, not within the room, but like waiting outside, and can provide that support for them in the medical facility. They also do long-term treatment and clinical care. So they do have clinical staff, and they are able to offer that support with the lens of someone who's experienced a sexual assault. Human trafficking hotline, they're available for anyone. And then also elder abuse. If folks have information or questions about, is this elder abuse, right? So that QR code will take you there. We also have several presentations on our website. If you have questions or additional thoughts or wanting to learn more information about the world of interpersonal violence, you can find us there. We also do presentations. So if folks are looking to integrate something into the curriculum, or if you would like for me to facilitate a presentation on trauma-informed care, bystander intervention, that's something that we do as well. So that will take you, again, QR code directly to our website with lots of information. Location is there. We're in Ed 2 North, 3rd floor, right off the south elevators there. I am partially remote, so I think the best process is to call or email before you drop by. But Tuesdays and Thursdays, I'm typically in the office and can offer that support in person. And obviously have flexibility with coming in. So here, if you guys have questions, obviously my contact info is there. So please reach out. And I look forward to seeing everyone March 30th at the curriculum.